Wonderful. Thank you so much.
And we're still waiting for, yeah, I'm blanking on her name. Hold on. My goodness. Jillian. Yes, that's who I was looking for. Here she is. And I think we're all here. Hi, Jillian. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Oh, my goodness. I feel like it's been a long time, and I appreciate your, taking this little break. I feel bad about it because I don't want us to lose momentum, but, it's just.
How did it go, Adrian?
Sorry?
Can you show us what it looks like,
Yes.
your show?
Yes. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So, yeah, just to kind of, go back to where I was last week. When we haven't been meeting, I have had 2 shows go up. One at the Brattleboro Art Museum and then one at the Danforth Art Museum. So it's been very exciting for me, and kind of the to me, putting the work up, because their installation really requires them to be up, to be the art, because they're separate individual pieces of sculpture, but they aren't really what they were meant to be until they're up hanging. So this was really like a part of the art process for me. So let me show you some images that I've taken. So I'm going to share the screen and take you first to my website, where I already put up a little video of the work. So let me just go there. Hold on a second. There we go. So it's quite the process.
Oh,
So
boy.
this is a piece on reflection, and so I make this a little bit. Whoops. Hold on. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Not Rothko.
No. I want to get this bigger. Sorry. So yeah, this is the video, and
It's still buffering.
Can you,
there it goes.
you enlarge that?
Yeah, I'm
for
going
us?
to try to. Yeah, here we go. So it ended up being one single piece in a room that's about 12 by 15. So the room's not very big, and it's called On Reflection. And so happily, there are both really deep shadows and reflected light that sparks on the wall. And then the soundtrack that you're hearing was designed specially for this piece. Because I want people to be in that room and be able to sit with it and have a kind of a meditative experience with it.
I don't hear any music at all. Do other?
It's not music. It's
Oh.
it's bomb. It's that's what it is.
Oh.
It's like chimes.
Now, are these that plastic stuff you were talking about, Adria?
Yeah.
And how do you,
Judy and I want to get some.
I know, we sure do. How do you get those pieces to stick together to adhere to one another?
I use special PVC glue.
Oh.
Yeah, so PVC is what they're made of, which is polyvinyl chloride, which is a foam. It's like styrofoam, but compressed. So it's you can cut it easily with a jigsaw, and
I'm sorry, Adria. Is anybody else having trouble? I'm still seeing the waiting sign.
oh no, really?
Rolling in front of me. I guess it must be mine.
Yeah, because I do think so.
Okay. I'm gonna leave and come back in because
Okay.
nothing's
Sure.
moving.
Go ahead and do
Sorry
that.
to bother you.
No,
guys.
it's fine. No.
Oh, Adria, I have a question. Was the airflow natural, or did you add anything to change the airflow?
There's a motor. There's a
Oh,
motor. So
okay.
the piece is spinning very slowly.
Oh.
And so my husband, who's a techie, programmed the motor, a little tiny motor,
Oh.
at the top on the ceiling that you can't see that moves the piece at random intervals. So you can
Oh.
be in there and feel like it's not moving, and then all of a sudden it'll start moving one direction and then slow down and stop, and then it'll reverse direction.
Oh my God, how cool.
How great is that? Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so that was really fun. So we're hoping Mary
It's
Ann
a
will
great
get it.
partnership, the art and the science.
Yeah, no, and it's been great because he's wanted to here. I didn't optimize the sound, but yeah, he has wanted to help. We've tried been convincing me that they should move for a long time, and this ended up being the perfect time to bring it all together. So at any rate, this is the one that's in Brattleboro.
And also with this exhibit, do they allow seating or are people standing most of the time?
Well, it's not that big a room, and so I decided, not to put a bench in there because I do want people to be able to walk all the way around it. But you could sit on the floor and you could just sit there and watch it. It's quite dark in the room. This doesn't really show that it's dark. I think it probably has to do with the way I took it, with a cell phone video. It's not great, but it does give you. So this is all reflective vinyl. So it acts like a mirror. And so it picks up light and casts it on the wall, and also kind of acts as a deep reflective area. So anyway, that's that. And then
How long will that be up, Adria?
sorry,
How long will that be in? Up?
that will be up through June.
Oh, good.
Yeah, June 12th is the end day. So I hope that you guys can come.
Field
and
trip,
visit it.
Judy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, come see it. And I will be there. I'm going to figure out some days that I'll be there to,
Oh, good.
But it's actually a really nice little museum because it's not just obviously not just my piece. My piece is in a small room, but there are like 6 or 7 other shows that are opening all at the same time. And there's some wonderful things going on there. My favorite part is this exhibit of glass pieces made that were fabricated by professional glass artists based on little kids' drawings. So, oh my God, it is so charming. It really, really is. Like, crazy monsters that these kids made, and the artists, kind of reinventing them. Very, very, very close to, what the picture looks like. So it's very fun. And now I'll show you one more thing, which is my, let's see, do I have this on here? Yeah, I think I do. Let me just get this. I think it's in my drive. Hold on here. So let me get out of this and go to my drive, and then we'll get to take a look at your stuff. So let me see here. Back to where I was. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and just real quickly, this is. There you go. This is part of the piece of the Danforth. So as you can see, this thing is moving with there's a box up here, and it's the same thing as the other one where it moves very randomly. And so there's actually 2 pieces that are moving at the same time. So
Adria, it's a little hard to tell. Are they like from top to bottom? Is it like 20 feet high or?
No, it's smaller than that. It's I'm going to say from top to bottom, this is like 10 feet. Yeah, 10 feet.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, I love it.
And I have a question again. There's a lot of colors in this. Did you paint this, or are they separate pieces of vinyl?
No, I make them all, just first. I assemble everything.
No, but did you see all the different colors? Did you paint the colors
Yes.
onto the sheets? Okay, so the
Well,
sheets
yes.
can take color.
Yeah, the pieces got cut, and then I glue them together, and then I hang them up in my studio, and then I paint. Because I, want to kind of respond to
Yes,
the
makes
shape of
perfect
the-
sense to me.
Those are
And
I was just
fabulous.
curious.
Do you do a lot of prototypes, like 12-inch high type things, or?
I don't, but I've done a lot of pieces in lighter weight material. Jillian, I've been kind of working with this imagery for now 2.5 years or so. So over that period of time, I've tried out a lot of different things, and I've just started working with this heavier stuff since this past summer. So it's both, it's heavier weight. Well, just to quickly show you, because just in terms of what we're talking about here, the work that preceded this on my website, this interference, this is from the Cahoon Museum. And so these were all lighter. So this is kind of all the stuff that preceded this heavier work. And it was much more bendable. This newer stuff doesn't bend in quite the same way, but it's much more sturdy. And, you know, I think that the way the pieces looks much more finished than these did. But this is all hung up on the ceiling.
Wow.
So, yeah, so yeah, you can see, you know,
I love that.
very kind of crazy all over the place and things popping out of.
Ah,
And this was in a room, you know, so I really want them to be very approachable, and I like to hang them at eye level because, you know, you kind of have this direct, you know, kind of contact with them in that way.
Are these Concord Art? That one, is that Concord Art?
No, this is all at the Cahoon Museum of American Art.
Oh, this is still Cahoon.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so anyway,
Andrea.
thank you for taking the time to look at that. It's been an
It's
interesting journey.
fantastic.
I have one more show going up at the end of the month at the Boston Sculptures Gallery, and I do hope that you guys can come and see it. I hope that people feel comfortable, you know, enough to come down, and I'll also be there. So it's at certain times, and I'll send you all information about that.
I went there just this week. There's a lot of wacky stuff, weaving with plastic
Yes.
bags.
Yes, yes. That's
It's always
Michelle
fun.
Luigi, who crochets with plastic bags.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
It's a really interesting show. So anyway, we digress, but I want to talk about all of you and where you were with all this, and, you know, some of my thoughts in between time. And I know that, you know, it's you know, the big thing about missing a class is that we can lose our momentum, but I was really hoping that, you know, we wouldn't do that. And I'm really hoping to, you know, get us all back together again and moving solidly forward for the next 3 weeks. But in the meantime, you know, I wonder if you had some thoughts, you know, about this project. So this was, you know, one of those where, again, it's about where do you start when you don't know where to start. So we did these pieces earlier. Then I had asked you that after you had done the three pieces in which you were required to kind of work into them to, you know, take them another step, whatever that means to you, right? So we did those 3 larger pieces, and then with one of them, if you had the time, and again, this is all just to kind of keep the momentum if you felt like you had the time and the inclination to go back to one of those and find smaller areas of interest in those larger pieces. And that was kind of to talk a little bit about composition, you know, in Marianne's, you know, question toward the end of last time's our meeting, you know, how do you know, you know, how do you use those thoughts about composition? How do we integrate them in what we're doing? So a lot to talk about, a lot to think about. So, you know, before we get started looking, what were your thoughts about all of that? All, you know, all of the stuff that happened in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, I'll be a guinea pig.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Sally, go ahead.
Who's going?
You.
Okay. It was very helpful to me to that transition from the really small sketches to choosing 3 to blow up somewhat, and then the last step to choose 5 sections within that to make composition. it really helped me see how to move from my work, which has been mostly inspired by landscape or streetscape and stuff, to get away from scenes and really just think about composition.
Mhm.
So that was a really important step for me. And I can't wait to take it further.
That's great.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and so again, we are working in an abstract mode. So one of the reasons we are in this class, and it doesn't mean that you have to always at all, of course, is that we're trying to get to the heart of an artistic experience. It doesn't rely on kind of drawing skills, and not to denigrate that skill at all, but to kind of try to experience that realm of abstraction that I think is very expressive, or that can be very expressive, and that is really at the heart of all art, I think, whether it's representational or not, because representational, it has to go beyond it has to go beyond the content of what something is to have that extra expressive mode. So even if you are, painting something from life, what makes it, kind of transcend is the way you've placed the objects, or the landscape, the way that you've used the colors, all that stuff, that's important as well. Okay, anybody else?
Well, I really like the point that Tally brought up. My husband's also a painter, and he works much more in a realism kind of mode. He has a hard time relating to abstraction, but he often says to me, how come your photo is better? Like, we're at the exact same scene, we get home, we look at our phones. Yours is, and I said, because I'm not looking at the horse. I'm looking at the shadows. I'm looking at the lines. I'm looking at the composition. And the horse is actually secondary. And, if his rear is off the picture, that's fine, if that works for the whole thing. And, so I think that there's this great dialogue between abstraction and how we see, regardless of how strong our drawing skills are, just how we see and how abstraction ties into it.
Yeah, exactly, Jillian. That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, other people, thoughts?
Could I just make sure I understand what Jillian said? Because it really resonated with me that if your husband is taking the picture of the horse, that doesn't really inspire a conversation as much as if you're just using the horse as a shape with its shadows and stuff in a frame. That composition really inspires a dialogue more. Was that your point?
Well, so the horse was standing in a barn with a wide opening, and his just looked like a horse in the barn. Mine looked more like all these triangles of light and triangles of shadow, and those triangles took you all around the rectangle of the photo, and you weren't even thinking horse as much as the dynamics of those moving shapes and lines and foreground and background of those. Is that tied to what you heard me say?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that dialogue, it's much more, I found that what I really hated during this, or I shouldn't use that word, but had challenges with this assignment was using sort of bits and pieces from previous classes that really I couldn't have a dialogue with. They just were like the horse standing there in the stall for me. And so I got stalled, pardon the pun, but it was drawing from another class that Adria taught that made me break through that barrier. And I could finally have a dialogue because I was responding to the shapes that I could just resonate with, I guess, would be.
I mean, that's so important, Judy, and I'm so glad you brought that up. So, yes, I mean, the idea is to get engaged in your work, and however you do that, if you have these strategies, which it sounds like you pulled out of the back pants pocket, use it. Exactly, so that you don't get stuck, so that it flows, right?
Yeah, that was it. I was hitting my head against a wall, and I think that can really kill all your creative
Exactly.
potential. Yeah.
That's right. So you use some of these strategies to get around that. That's exactly right. And that's what all artists do. They are, they're all little strategies that we have that get us past that, beating your head against the wall. I don't want to do this because I'm stuck kind of feeling.
Well, it reminded me of a hat I used to have, and it said something like, art is about breaking the rules.
Yeah.
And when I was a child, I was such an obedient child. If someone told me to do this assignment, I would do it. And I find myself still sometimes in that mode, and I've got to remember to break the rules more.
Well, that's so interesting. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Great. Marianne and Susan, did you want to weigh in, you guys? What were your thoughts about this week or 2 weeks of just kind of working on your own with this project?
Well, but one of the things that happened to me is I found myself turning on the fire and going to read. And I read lots of things, but Paul Klee wrote something. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it, is it Clay or Klee? Clay.
I say Clay.
And he talked about this thing of an artist being a conduit and not being conscious of what you're actually conducting, so that you can't take the credit or the blame for it, but you get it by seeing and being open to it flowing through you. He didn't say this, but I also think you get it from putting the work into the technical stuff, understanding color, understanding the rules of composition, understanding the drawing rules, and then breaking them and know what you're doing when you're breaking them. But I keep waiting for that flow, and I'm not getting it. I guess I'm still in the mode of having, or maybe it's a psychological thing where I'm stuck because I'm forcing myself to keep drawing exactly what I see, to get it better and better because it looks wonky or it's not quite right, and I need to fix it before I can move on. I'm not sure. I felt like I was going through a whole set of shrink things with this class.
Yeah, so I mean, I know what you're saying, and this is why I don't want to give you rules. So you'll have, every teacher is going to be different, and I don't want to put down anybody's way of teaching things. And I have taught classes that are specifically how to draw classes or whatever. And Marianne, you've been in some of those, in which we're trying to teach the skill of capturing something that's in front of us, and so there are strategies that you can learn. It's like learning how to read. It really is. And then there are these, you hear in terms of rules, people say there are design, composition rules. So I am very reluctant to give you guys those first. I think that those are better used after you do your work to improve, to be able to speak even more, to communicate your idea even better, so that you use it after you have this, initial outpouring of, expression and play. And then you go back in. And that's like the editing part, rather than conforming to the rules of composition, that it's like already you have something around your neck preventing you from making your work, keeping it from flowing from you. So it's like,
I'm sorry. I watched a show on jazz, and how it's all improv.
yes.
How they they were great musicians, but then they sat down and it was total improv.
Yeah.
So I put some jazz on, and one of the ones that played over and over again was Salt Peanuts. Salt peanuts, salt peanuts, salt peanuts. and it was helpful. It was helpful.
Right.
Like it was either that or a psychotropic drug or a bottle of water.
That's
think,
great.
get rid of get rid of those editing processes while you're doing it and wait to edit later. Yeah.
No.
I love it.
And I know you're taking other classes at the same time, so that could be confusing.
Well, it isn't quite different than your classes. I mean, these are very
Yeah.
technically precise,
No.
and the value of this and the value of that, and fix that line kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's like I can't quite let go of that. But sometimes I think, well, when you were talking, Adrian, I was thinking, well, you can't write great literature until you learn how to read, right? So that's what I should be doing, learning how to read. Then I think of Mark Twain and the beauty of his vernacular,
Yeah.
the beauty of his natural language that kind of came out. So
Right, Marianne. I mean, yes, exactly. In my opinion, I understand how you may be very torn. And as a student, you may be very torn by that. Well, we can talk later. I just want to hear from Susan.
I just want to say I love this class because it made me want to jump. It made me want to just do it and throw caution to the winds. And
Yes, right,
yeah.
Right, because again, who are we trying to please, in this? I mean, that's the thing. It's a big, interesting argument in art schools as well. What does an artist need to know, honestly? What do you teach? My feeling is maybe you just, you teach philosophy. Maybe that's the best thing, in the end of the day. But Susan, I want to hear from you before we take a look at things. Did you have any thoughts about these last 2 weeks and issues, problems, concerns?
It's all really new to me. I really don't even know how to manage a paintbrush very well. So, and I don't have any idea about color, like what color I want. So for me, it's more like, oh, well, this looks like a good color. I'll put some down and see what happens. And then I paint that color. So I'm just doing it. And
That's
I'm trying
great.
not to have any ego.
Good.
I'm just trying to do it.
That's great. Yes, exactly. I think that's the best way to kind of be in this class at the moment, is to just let it happen. Because this isn't a class about color. I am offering a class about color, a 2-day little workshop on it, but even that won't help you with this question. What I'm saying about, this approach is, it's a journey. And as you paint, as you just let it flow, you will have ideas about color and shape and all this other stuff. I mean, it will happen, but putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion, this is what this class is about, is getting you to just engage in the process. And from there, let other things happen. From there, you'll, let other things flow. And this is not critical, Marianne. I'm not saying, I'm just saying that's, to have kind of an unconfused kind of an experience.
Yeah.
To just make it, to make the decision, maybe to put the other stuff, and not to say that those other things aren't that really worth learning. They are, but they are kind of a different thing. It's a different to edit, to to look and see, as opposed to making and having it come from within. I'm saying,
Maybe
So-
not at the time, huh? Maybe I should just organize classes along the year with an absorption of the abstract, and then go back for a time to the technical paint and drawing stuff.
It could be a good idea to do them at least one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all good. Just just for you, it's a lot to juggle. All right, so let's go look at our Padlets and see where we are with the Padlets, everybody. So just to look at what we did. All righty, here we go. So, whoops. Jillian, you're up first. Let's see what you did. Okay, so wow, all right. And oh yeah, and we didn't even talk about the other thing that we were kind of getting involved with, which I can see your beginning of the Marking Lives project. But let's, for the moment, just talk about these. Wow, great. So so what we did,
Fun.
we started with a little like 10 pieces, a collage that were based on, pieces from the music part and then pieces from the line drawing, et cetera, which you generated here. And then you took 3 that you were most interested in and redid them or worked into them on a larger scale. It looks like this one was one of them. Yes. And then you cropped in to smaller areas, Jillian, and came up with 5 smaller pieces.
Mhm.
Great. And so that was a really fun, an interesting iteration of this kind of an assignment. Oh, here's another of your 12 by 18. Great. So, it looks like you were engaged in this. It looks like, what did you learn? So it's always going to be my question. We're now not talking about good or bad. We're talking about what did you learn? What was, something that was eye-opening for you in this process?
She's muted.
Oh, are you muted? Jillian, unmute.
I wondered why I've been talking and nothing's going on.
Okay.
So the first one you highlighted was the first one, and that was the last one. Anyway, the green and red one, and yellow, that was my first one.
Okay.
And it was kind of painful.
Mhm.
Like, I really couldn't get it right. I can't tell you how many times I changed the color of something or added a new shape or a new direction. And at the end of the day, there's still parts I don't like the spiral at the bottom. I'm not happy with that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I felt like I have to cut it loose and move on.
Yes.
So then I did the one that looks kind of pinks with butterfly-ish shapes. You also, that one.
Yeah.
That was my second one. That one went fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was painful. I'm not as crazy about that in some ways either.
Yeah.
And then my last one was the one to the right, which has basically brown and peach colors.
Not this one. This one.
One more
Yeah.
over. That one.
That one,
I
yeah.
actually love this one. I don't know if it's the simplicity. I just like this one hit home. I think it took me less than an hour to do it. And I was like, don't do anything more. Stop.
Great. Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting, Jillian, and it's interesting that it was your third one. And I also, just want to highlight what you said about your first one, that it was a struggle. So I don't know that I ever said to you that this would be easy or that art making is an easy thing, or, that you're going to be satisfied and happy all the time. No, this is just understand that if you feel this way, this is part of the process. This is art making. This struggle is the art making. Yeah. If you feel that way, you are not alone. And it's actually, I think why we do this, because we are trying to answer questions. We are trying to, if it was easy, why would we be interested in doing it? Really? I mean,
let me just add one more point. That last one that I said I like a lot, it was kind of a breakthrough for me because when I work on a landscape in my studio, sometimes it takes me weeks going in like 4 or 5 times a day. I cannot let something go. So it was incredibly freeing to me to feel like I hit the mark. For myself anyway. When I got to this point with this painting and I was able to walk away and say, that's it. go
Yeah.
on, go to the next thing.
Great, great. Yeah, because that, you know, that is that is, you know, that is the flow, you know, of just like, yeah, and knowing that you can do more and, you know, appreciating this for what it is. So you were enjoying the minimal, you know, sort of the less busy aspect of this is what you said. That's interesting.
Right, I like the colors. I was
Mhm.
happy with the translation from the small piece,
Uh-huh.
which is the one right to the left of it, if you want
Oh,
to
this one,
just,
uh-huh. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that was what it
Yeah.
was based on. So
Yeah.
even at that, I really simplified.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because these can go so many different ways. Well, that's great, and I think it's also interesting here that you have a little bit of dimensionality. You know, you have this like a piece that looks as though it goes inside of, you know, this kind of wraparound shape. You know, there is a sort of space that you're creating here, and that's really interesting, and that wasn't necessarily there in this one here. So. Great,
Exactly.
Joanne. Yeah. You know what? I don't want to take. I want to get into this. This is very interesting. But let's backtrack around back to it.
Sure,
In a
of
while.
course.
Okay, great. Again, this is, you know, I'm not rushing through anybody. I just want you all to, you know, I want us all to kind of touch base on what we've got to see.
Wait.
Judy.
Oh, well.
Great. Here we are. So let's see. Here were your initial little ones. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep. And then we moved into some of the larger pieces.
I only did two
That's fine.
large ones, I'm
Yep.
afraid.
That's fine. Wait, are these them right here? These two?
This one, yeah, that's one. Mhm.
Great. Great. Yeah. Yeah. And again, you know, the question to you is, what did you learn? What was new?
Well, I think I mentioned to you in the beginning of the class that I really was not, my fragments from former work was not really something I could draw on. I was just always, you know, baffled by it and unable to move forward. So just if anyone else doesn't know, we were in a class where your assignment was to use words in art and to write it on a piece of paper and use the shapes that those words created as a basis for a painting. And so that's what I did.
That's wonderful. I am so pleased to hear that.
And then I added more words, which are not
see
really meant to
that.
be read, they're just shapes.
Yes, yes. And yet, when you read them, they are an interesting
Yeah.
little narrative there, you know, which
Yeah.
is so interesting how that does really, you know, help to express some of the things you're talking about in here. Great. Well, that's, I think, a huge takeaway is to, you know, learn that that's something that ignites you. You know, great to know what that is, you know, that if you are struggling, you know, a word in there, not necessarily, you know, meant to read it as a word, but as a texture or whatever, can be something that you find great to jump off of.
Mhm.
And a cropping, yeah. Using this as a texture, if you can see it, not reading,
Right.
it's hard not to read it, but to, I mean, because we're just so you know, geared that way to read, but you can
Right.
also just kind of split your eyes and see him as black and white. That repeats some of this shape going on up here. Yeah. Yeah, great. And did you have fun finding some of these little areas?
Oh,
Judy?
I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah. You know, this one, again, if you remember what I was saying about like letting things go off the edge of the paper, I think this one does that very well, you know, to make
I kind of like the negative shape, which is the, you know,
negative shape.
chartreuse.
Exactly. Great. Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Yeah. Another one where the texture repeats here with the texture of the line in your other area here. Great. Okay, we're going to move on to, let's see, Susan. All righty, so let's see, our little ones were down here. These here. Where's my
Yeah,
little-
so the those like the third row down, all those like light blue and
The swirls?
okay, the swirls are just what I do naturally. That's just what
Okay,
I
yeah.
do
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
naturally. So that those are not part of this class. I just sort
Oh,
of
okay. Uh-huh.
that's just what comes out naturally.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
it's a pretty interesting, natural bark that you're making this swirly thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is I do that like those like do those in like 2 minutes and then
Hmm.
it's not really art because I just don't really work on them. So that's sort of annoying. So what I want to do is get more involved. So
Yeah.
these three on the top right, I guess my
Yes.
point to them doesn't really help you.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah, your pointing does not help me. But I get it. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So those are what I'm working on now.
Yeah.
Those are the details. So I'm actually doing the assignment, which is unusual for me because I usually blow everything off. But in this case, I'm actually doing the assignment.
Great. Yeah.
And they're not finished, but I am here, look at me. Now I'm taking them further,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
so I'm now, but basically for me, it's a lot about learning how to operate the equipment at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, I don't like this big orange part in the top there, but whatever. So I'm just like taking them further. That's what I'm doing. And
Great.
the
And
lovely
you know-
guy at my frame shop yesterday gave me these really great these things
Oh, yeah.
and I love
Fantastic. Yep.
so much.
The
So I'm really
croppers.
excited to
Yeah.
have these. And I'm gonna do the next step of the project.
Great.
If I finish this step.
Perfect. Yeah. And try not to judge what you're doing. Just say, oh, that's interesting. The orange is interesting. Look what it does. Hey, that's cool. So that you don't have that negativity. We all have to get rid of those voices. Oh,
Ego and monkey mind, all that stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
also like learning how to, I'm paying a lot of attention to using the paintbrush and what paintbrush does what for you and that kind of stuff. So
exactly.
that's just
Exactly.
technical and that's kind of fun to lose yourself in that.
Exactly. Because you know what? There are really no rules. That
Yeah,
you
and
have
it's
to do
not-
anything really. Look, yes, when you're trying to paint representationally, that is a different thing, but that's not what we're doing in here. We're kind of attacking art making from the other side, the intuitive side first. And yes, you can learn the right way to use certain brushes, depending on what you're trying to do, but you can also discover what they do all by yourself. And it's not wrong. It's just a different approach.
I've taken a lot of intuitive art classes,
Yeah.
but you don't learn anything about art. You just sort of try to reach your inner demons and all that stuff. And as great as that is for some people, I that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to actually do art for art's sake, not for psychological, emotional growth. For that, I have my shrink and all that stuff.
Well, I'm hoping we're sort of bridging the gap in here where kind of both things are going. I'm hoping that that's true. If not, let's talk and I can,
This is
guide you a little
this
bit
is
more.
what I'm looking for.
Okay, good. 'Cause, yeah, I mean,
Adria, I have to leave in about 10 minutes. Any chance you could do?
there's
My
a good
next.
chance. There's a good chance. Let's do you.
Well, I'm sorry to be pushing.
No, Tally, that's fine. Thank you for reminding me. I'm just, losing my sense of time here. Yeah. All right.
I'll go
Tally.
last next time. No problem.
Yes. Okay, so, all right, your smaller pieces were here. Great, and then you blew some up. We saw this wonderful little collection, which is also really fun. And you can all see how, that's another whole, that could also be one of the projects that I gave you, but it wasn't, but you put it together anyway, Tally, and see how these all kind of begin to talk to each other, which is great. But then, let's see, you have some
So I
larger
picked
ones.
3 from there,
Okay,
and then you'll see them.
okay. This one
Yeah.
is one.
Mhm.
Expanded
top
version.
The top 4. Yeah,
Top one. Okay,
that's the
great.
first stage.
Okay, yeah. Great. And so you also added words, which is fine. Why not? Exactly. And, you know, kind of having a little inner dialogue with the, you know, the little judgers that we all have on our own heads here. And then croppings, I'm gonna guess these are your croppings from this bigger one. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so-
Instead of painting, I did the framing thing,
Yes,
and then
yes,
I took a picture because I didn't have time to paint it.
that's great. Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, this was, you know, meant to, you know, actually cut them out of one of your pieces, but yeah. Great. So you're finding other compositions in here that can, in fact, be, you know, the impetus for a whole other set of painting and artwork that you might
Mhm.
continue to go into.
Mhm.
Tally, what did you learn?
Well, I learned to take chances, I think. I was giggling with Judy that my mantra right now is to be reckless,
I saw
just
that.
go for it. And
That's
so I
wonderful.
tried not to judge too much, but
Good.
just to see where it would take me.
Exactly. You know, I think this one is really interesting as well. But yes, exactly. To take those chances, to be reckless, to see what happens. And you know, these are all like sort of ins for more
Mhm.
work, more
Mhm.
like where do I start? Where, you know, where do I go when I'm stuck kind of thing.
Well,
Um,
even the top 3 left ones there,
Yeah,
I can't wait to play with the third dimension, and I can see those being, you know, using those as an inspiration for hanging or whatever.
that's right. They're all like, you know, platforms to spring from. Great. Yeah, Tally. So I am, you know, recording this, so you'll be able to see
Yeah,
where we
thank
are
you very
with
much.
this. Yeah. That's what I wanted to look at this. Let's see. Who is next? Marianne, you're next here. Let's see what you put together here. Maple syrup. Let's see.
Yeah, that it's that second column, but go down one. There you go.
This
So this one, this was the first try that I couldn't kind of get myself out of the figurative. Well, I loved the idea of the shape of a piano. I was listening to the music and the shape of the piano was getting to me. And then I just kept drawing.
Great.
So these, those pieces, the multicolored. So that
Oh,
I
wow.
left it all behind.
Yeah.
And I did another piece and I did a lot of, I had photographs of sand,
Yeah.
different shapes in the sand,
Yeah.
and I cut them up.
Yeah.
And I stuck them onto a piece of paper that I had rolled those colors onto with a
Yeah.
roller,
Yeah.
because it was easier to get out of my head without
Yeah.
a brush in my hand.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say that, you know, brushes can really do a number on our because they're so loaded. You know, we tend to associate them with the real art, you know, and it's like, that's BS.
Uh-huh.
But it's kind of hard to get that out of your head. So, yeah. So this, I'm so pleased that you kind of took that leap. And yes, this is what we're talking about exactly, Marianne, moving away from that, you know, illustration to sort of a more visceral experience of what the music was for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what happened. And
Yes.
so, so every time I could see something in the cropping,
Yeah.
I turned it upside down or cut off half of it, or just tried to get away from, just the exercise was don't see anything.
Yes.
Don't, just see the shapes and what you like of the shapes. And that's what happened.
Yes, exactly. Well, that is great. That is.
How did you get that texture in the previous one?
Those are all photographs, Judy,
Okay.
of sand.
Oh,
I
okay.
just got close to the sand. It was a big expansive beach and I took photographs. You can see that one this one that you're looking at now, that it's a rock sitting in a little pool of water,
Oh,
and the sand around it, and I just kept cutting, but I still see things in it. That
oh,
looks like an eye to me. You know,
Right. But, you know, I think the viewer experience, you know, is, for me, I'm really enjoying seeing these and, um, you know, feeling they're quite expressive. And, you know, that this one with the piano locks me into a certain way of thinking, where that, you know, the expressivity that you got in these other ones is really worth, you know, really worth looking at, Marianne, and acknowledging that you're doing something here that really is communicating, you know, a lot about the music or something else, you know, in its colors, its shape, and its flow. Um, hold on to that.
Hmm.
Hold on to it, you know, and the colors that you're using and the way that you're using them. Yeah. And I also look over here at this other, you know, grouping and feel like, you know, there's real significant, you know, stuff that's happening in your photographs too. So, hey, yeah, yeah, just acknowledge that this is this is all stuff to really be, you know, yeah.
that that I
Yeah.
couldn't resist, because I was walking in the woods and
Yeah.
those buckets are hanging on the trees in the woods in
Yeah.
Weston, and they kept coming up, so I just painted them.
Right, but the way that you're painting them without, you know, without a real kind of realistic view really creates something interesting for the viewer that may or may not be about the maple syrup buckets, but it's about other things. So yeah,
You know, the texture of bark,
yeah.
textures are just so alluring to me.
Well, that's what you got to hold on to there. Yeah, there's something there for you. And so, like I say, pay attention to these things that you are drawn to. And this is why we started this whole class out with a picture, with a photography assignment, because what you are drawn to is really important to pay attention to, you know, because that is maybe where your art making will emerge from.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Did we look at everybody? Yes. I think we did. We did. Yes. Okay. Great. Super, everybody. This is very exciting, and I'm so pleased, you know, that you were able to keep it up. I want to talk next about this other thing that, you know, I mentioned briefly in my email. You know, it was just like thinking about this class and where we are now and feeling like, okay, the next piece of this has got to acknowledge the place that art making comes from, where it is uh, it's growing from an emotional core. And, you know, it's so important to acknowledge that and also to explore that a bit. And that was also where, you know, I saw that the mark making COVID-19 project. And I had a little back and forth with Jillian too about it. You know, when I first saw it, which, you know, my friend Liz Awald, who I know, and I know she began this like a month ago or so, when I first saw it, I was very reluctant about it, you know, and I'm like, mm, it's it's tricky. It's tricky because I feel like I know what she's trying to do, and I know that what she's trying to do is coming from a really good place, which is let's help people remember, you know, the toll that this has taken on us. But I'm afraid that it can kind of help, you know, gloss over this real deep. I'm almost afraid to go there myself. You know, like there's a way in which it's too easy.
Hmm.
But then there's another way in which it can be a very profound place to go with our art making. And I would love to hear your thoughts, but before we do that, I put together a slideshow that I wanted to talk to you about, where it's artists who are, you know, especially people who I think drew from an emotional place in their work. So let me just show you this little, PowerPoint I put together. Okay, let's see here. There you go. Okay. So this is Edvard Munch, and you all know his work from, hold on, wait a minute. You all know his work from The Scream and so much other stuff. And he was a Norwegian artist living around the turn of the 1900s into the 20th century a bit, I believe. And, you know, he's somebody who really put himself out there, and, you know, some of his work is just so, you know, very sad to look at, and yet beautiful. I mean, he was somebody, you know, people, you know, say that he was afflicted by depression. You could say that. You could also just say that he was, you know, reflecting his times. But, you know, a lot of these artists I'm showing you are representational to an extent. But I think that it's interesting. And even when we look at this work, you know, yes, there is an undercurrent of, you could say, sadness, but through it, there's some real beauty, you know, in these colors and the marks and the, you know, the whole composition. But you know, you can also look at it as a man that has a sort of grimace on his face, and he's not standing up straight. And I mean, it gives you a sense of, well, you tell me, what do you think when you're looking at this?
I see cold colors, just cold colors. Even the green is cold, the yellow is cold, the blue is cold, the red is subdued.
Yeah,
I see a very haunting quality to the light.
yeah.
I mean, his look is sort of like, what's all mysterious, and I can almost hear music. You know, it would be like the Twilight Zone music.
Right, right. Interesting. Anybody else? What do you feel when you see this?
I feel a connection with that time and what I felt during the Trumpian age.
Yeah.
I've been drawn, I was drawn to look at Munch a lot over the past several months during COVID and the political environment that I didn't go with my heart. And yeah, I can identify with that. I can feel it. I can feel the cold in the pit of my stomach.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. And he's all by himself in this one. It's just interesting. You know, I actually did just, you know, I was looking for artists who did really, you know, send a strong emotional message in their work. And, you know, yeah, that's what came up. Yeah, you know, the eye sockets are deep in shadow. You know, he is kind of peering out at the viewer, you know, his face is frowning, but the other parts of this are, you know, there is a sadness and a downward emotional feeling. Let's just go to the next one here. You know, so Frida Kahlo, you probably all know that she drew from, you know, a lot of personal physical pain and emotional pain. She was not someone who shied away. And, you know, this is probably one of her less difficult pieces to look at. But, you know, of course, we're looking at her with this thorny necklace. Tell me what you all see in this one.
You know, she tends to give me a sense of a battle that's going on. Nature isn't light and airy and beautiful and all sweetness. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard, and she's in this jungle, this dangerous jungle, and yet she's affirming the life of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not cold. It's not like Monk. The world is cold and it's dark.
Yeah.
It's full and it's living and it's dangerous and it's
That's-
hard.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I'm just noticing how her eyebrows reflect the shape of the bird on her
Yeah.
neck, like
Oh
how
my
she
God, I didn't even see that, Jillian. You're right.
carries that rhythm, and
Yeah.
it's almost like a weapon, the way the bird is shaped.
Yeah.
And the cat's expression is so worried, just like scary almost. Now, the monkey, on the other hand, is kind of laid back, kind of a little different tone
Yeah,
than the
exactly.
cat and her face.
Yeah. Her hair too, the top of her hair reflects that same curved, the top of her.
Yeah, right.
same-
Oh, very perceptive, you guys. I wasn't even looking at that. Right. Yeah, you know, she had so much pain. You all know the story that she had a terrible accident in her teens, and she had many operations on her spine and her legs, you know, just it was awful. And she did a lot of painting from bed. Did you all know that story about her?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, she really suffered. She had a lot of suffering. She had miscarriages. She, you know, had a very tumultuous love life with Diego Rivera, her husband. You know, she was somebody who, you know, she was a force of nature herself. But, you know, and as I said, this is one of her more mild meanings. But you know, gotta look at this crown of thorns in, you know, kind of choking her as somebody, you know, who, you know, she gets in, but, you know, both she and Monk, I mean, these are not sort of dramatic, you know, paint flailing kinds of artworks. They're crafted. So it's like an emotional message that is sort of sifted through. Well, there's the Monk, you know, scream that we all know about, and even this one, it isn't flailing paint, but it's, you know, again, crafted, but really speaks, I think, of. I mean, it's funny, if you look at this painting on the web, you'll see 1,000 iterations of people kind of making fun of it, you know, because it's so much part of the popular culture now. But when it, you know, when you came, you know, when it was first seen, I think it was an expression of kind of the wars of that time, the depression, the difficulty that, you know, was in the world at that time that Monk was painting. So it's very evocative of how, you know, we tend to want to tend to feel it right now, I think. But again, look, it's interesting how he echoes this feeling of Scream with, you know, shapes and colors and, you know, the line quality that goes through this whole thing. Kate Kolitz, you might know of her. You know, she's somebody I think of immediately who, I mean, again, this was a milder one.
Who is that? Say it again.
Sorry, what?
What's the artist's name again? I'm not
Oh,
familiar with this.
Kate Kolitz. Kate Kolitz.
Kate Kolitz.
She is somebody who you also want to look up after the fact here. Kollwitz. She worked during the First World War. She was a German artist, Jewish, and she saw, you know, a lot of this horrible stuff happening around her with the war. And so many, wait, I just want to, yeah, here's another one of hers. Again, I didn't want to put some of her rougher ones out, but I really invite you to look at her. She did a lot of work of, you know, mothers with dead children and, oh, you know, just stuff that's just like, I don't really want to necessarily put that out to you today, but just as somebody who her work really did very much draw from the stuff that she saw around her during the war. you know, this is a woodcut, but, you know, look at this, you know, the big black shape here in the face, in not very many lines, and, you know, this sort of physical pose of, you know, arms around, you know, you can really feel the pain that she's expressing here, very, very obviously. And then
A pregnant woman, it looks like.
it
No?
does look like that. It does. Yeah. I don't know if it was, but it does look like she's pregnant
Or maybe
Look
holding
how
a
large
baby.
her
because-
or
right
holding a
hand is.
child. Yeah. There's a
Holding a
lot of
child.
stuff that she's put out there that they're really, really, oh, I mean, you know, you can't help but have a very emotional, very strong feeling when you look at the body of her work. And of course, Van Gogh, you know, who I think was also very emotionally driven. And, you know, there's all sorts of thoughts about why he painted the way he did. You know, was this hallucinogenic? Was this, is he a raving, madman, or is he just responding to nature? You know, but the way he uses brush strokes here and, you know, gives you almost a dizzying feeling of the night sky. Again, this one has been reproduced 1,001 times. People love it. Will really relate to it.
Adria, I just read something about this painting, and that there was an astronomist, not astrologist, who put out a chart right before he painted this, and it was of the orbits
Yeah.
of the planets,
Uh-huh.
and it had the circles, and they think that he saw that.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
that it inspired him.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and actually to Susan's point of your swirls, you know, it makes you think about that. And, you know, I would say that, you know, don't necessarily denigrate your swirls, because they can be meaningful places for you to begin your work too. You know, and there is a sense of what do we read when we think about, when we see this swirl? I mean, literally read the painting, you know, read the shapes and the colors. They give you a feeling of almost dizziness and swirling and kind of an all-encompassing feeling of nature. And Mark Rothko, who, you know, doesn't use literal imagery at all, but his work was all about connecting to people in a spiritual way. Like, these are big paintings. So when you're standing in front of them, you are enveloped by the color. You can't help that, you know. So these are like, I don't know, I'm going to say 12, 15 feet high. They're big pieces. They really are big. I could look at the sides of them, but, you know, they're painted actually very meticulously with a very small brush, believe it or not. So that when you're standing in front of them, the colors have a depth to them that are not just like flat color. They're really deep. They give you a feeling of being enveloped in a spiritually connected way. Well, that was his intention anyway. And the final artist that we're looking at here is Joan Mitchell, an abstract artist who, you know, who really uses the brush marks and color to, you know, tell us how she's feeling about her life and nature. A lot of the stuff is about nature. So, you know, can you, you know, get a feeling from her brushstrokes? What do you read in those brushstrokes, for example? Anybody want to?
Well, I think what's surprising me is I've never seen these palettes for her work. The work of hers that I'm familiar with has more like blacks and reds, and especially the piece before this, the first one you showed us. I've never seen her work in that palette. So that's like really, that's so beautiful. Her pieces are very, very energetic. They're very large. You can tell like she probably has to stand on a scaffold to
Oh,
paint
yes,
something.
these are very big. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They were very large. So yeah, she worked like, I guess she died in the, I'm gonna say the, ooh, 90s? I'm gonna say that. I think so.
Yeah,
But you know, she's one of the few women artists who really were acknowledged as an abstract artist, you know, very in a very big way. But that aside, you know, she did have this mark making, which that's, you know, all this brush work. There were, you know, tend to be very discrete marks of color that kind of put together give you, you know, give you kind of an overall feeling. But she was really known for the mark making that she did, you know, to be expressive. What are you getting emotionally from these? Anybody?
frenzy,
Frenzy. Yep.
very
Yeah.
stirred up.
Yep. Anybody else?
Very delicate.
Delicate. That's interesting. Uh-huh. You're right. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, these are big, but the marks are not that big. You're really right about that, you know. You see these bigger. I guess we can. Yeah, there's
I
a
get a
lot.
feeling,
Go ahead.
I get a feeling of uncertainty.
Hmm.
You know, positive, the colors convey a positive state of mind, but uncertainty, the marks, you know, even when I squint my eyes, they don't really say anything to me. They're just kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I find those colors a bit offensive.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
garish.
Garish.
Interesting.
It's so funny compared to her other colors I've seen. This looks so elegant and beautiful to me compared to, we were in front of one of her paintings yesterday. We were at the Worcester Art Museum,
Great. Uh-huh.
and it was a very, very different palette.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, yes. So yeah, right. She is an artist who, you know, has done many, many pieces, of course, over the years. So, you know, she probably has played a lot with a lot of different, but at any rate, you know, I do feel a sort of an emotional expressivity in her work. You know, what you decipher is, of course, personal, but anyway, you know, yeah, that's my little slideshow. I wanted to start with that because, you know, it does bring up this idea of, you know, of expressing or expressing an emotion or starting one's work with an emotional beginning. And that brings us back to the COVID project. So I'd love to hear just a little bit of talk about that. And then I'm going to propose a project for us that kind of is drawing from this idea.
So Adria, I did one for her. I was taking a drawing class from Jane Goldman.
Yeah.
She presented the project and I did one with 4,000 marks in it.
Wow.
And it was basically a road of a road through a forest of hydrangeas. And it was nauseating. And I felt the nauseating feeling and when will this be done? And I can't wait for this to be over. And I felt like that's the point. That's the point. You can't go by the deaths of all of these people and just gloss over them. Just sit here and feel this. Make these marks, finish this painting, and offer it up to the suffering that you're not feeling because nobody you love died. And but they're out there and the pain is out there and it's real. And I did have a big emotional response to it, and I finished it. And then I added a lot of yellow to it. So kind of moonlight glow is what it felt like to me. And I wanted it to feel lighter, brighter. I wanted, after that, all those marks, I wanted it to feel like those souls were free.
Wow.
And that's just what happened to me in
Yeah.
doing it. But
That's so wonderful. Thank you, Marianne. That's such an interesting thing to hear. I think that's maybe what Liz is wanting us to do, you know, in this project. Jillian, you did do some of this. Tell me what you've had thought. I'd love to hear you share your thoughts with each other. You're
Yeah, and oops, okay, I am unmuted. I was carrying on so heavily the first time I read your email. My husband was like, just relax, go meditate or something. 'Cause I was like, what? I don't want to do this, like in the worst way.
yeah.
And it brought up a lot of stuff for me. And I decided, so I like to read Pema Chodron, and her main message is lean into things that you're disturbed by. Start where you are, just lean into it if it's something that's stirring you up. So I spent about a day leaning into the emotion I was having about this assignment. And I wrote very briefly to Adria about where I was with it at that point. And then I looked at the materials that Adria sent us, like looking at the Concord Art video that was in one of her emails. I didn't actually read it, listen to it every minute, but I kind of fast forwarded it to different
Right.
pieces because I really didn't have an hour and a half
Right.
to give to something I was already very angry about.
I hear you. I hear you. No.
So, but by the end, I saw enough of it, maybe overall 25 minutes of it, and I had a turnaround experience where it started to inspire me. And then I went out to the Instagram that was also one of your links, and I looked at what people wrote about what they went through, like their couple of sentences. And the pieces, many of them are beautiful, just so elegant and so beautiful. That kind of got me positive toward the whole project. So I started the piece I posted that I'm working on, just in progress, is an old canvas I've had that actually I had given up for dead in my own way. And I thought, well, I want to breathe this emotional experience into that painting that I had already called dead. And I ended up dividing it into 1,008 rectangles.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't do the math to get to exactly 1,000 to fit that proportion. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking rectangular shapes, using like stencils, but I'm moving them around. So initially they were all going to be like lined up like tombs and or what do you call them? Not tombs, but stone, like gravestones.
Yeah.
But then I thought, no, these are living people who've had souls. And actually one piece I left out, I had said to Adria, I worked for a corporation that did a lot of layoffs over the years, Digital / Compaq / Hewlett Packard. And I was there for 25 years, and it was always the survivors who suffered. The people who got laid off, they moved on, kind of like Marianne was saying, they moved on to a spiritual place. And I actually was holding both my parents' hands when they passed away. And I really felt their peace. So for me, the anger was more about the survivors and what we have left for us, all of us. And I did lose myself, someone close to me. And my first reaction to the project was, this couldn't possibly honor this person's life who had meant something so much to me. Wasn't a relative, but it was a very close friend. So anyway, I'm babbling a bit, but the point being, now that I'm starting it and I'm into it, and I've made a few of my little rectangle shapes, and I'm going to do 1,000 of these in different positions, different colors on my big canvas, I'm realizing I'm angry about other things. Like it's screaming. I'm watching the news, and I'm watching these Asian murders that went on, and I'm like, why just focus? So the emotion is running very, very well, and I'm enjoying working on my painting. I'm not necessarily like locked into it's just about people who passed. So that's just,
That's so interesting. Thank you, Jillian. That's really, really, yeah, Susan, go ahead. Yeah.
I watched the, maybe the first half of it, and I loved some of the pieces of art, and I thought, I love this work. But my enjoying the pretty pictures, oh god damn it, was not feeling of loss for our country and for the people's lives. It was like, oh, I'm enjoying these nice pictures. So that felt strange.
Yeah, I know.
That
I know. Yeah, and I, you like Jillian's experience, I think for the person who made it, one hopes that, in the process of doing it was a maybe a cathartic experience. But yeah, I mean, so right, let's leave that and just sort of say that, it is a valid place to make art from. An emotion is a valid place, and it can be a happy emotion as well. It can be a thoughtful emotion. It can be it doesn't have to be anger or sadness. But I guess what I'm saying is that as as thinking about art making as as in a place that you want to engage in as we live our lives, it can be like we can engage with our heads. It's much safer and easier, frankly, to I think engage in art making from our heads. It's much harder and scarier to engage in it with our guts and our hearts, right? And there is a way in which, I mean, everybody's work that we looked at, you're seeing the results of people's grappling with their emotions, but it's filtered. So like there's this impetus to respond in a very visceral way on a piece of paper with paints and, just kind of get it out there and kind of spew anger or all these other sadness or deep, whatever, onto a page. But then what happens as art makers is, you don't do it just once, because that part is therapy. So like there's a therapeutic part where you spew in colors and shapes or whatever, this sort of immediate, reaction to an emotional place. But then to make art of it, you filter it, right? Because the art making part of it is, it's like poetry, like, immediately spewing, words of anger and sorrow down on a page, but it doesn't become poetry until you filter through it, you edit it, you work with those things, and you kind of wholly, make a poetic experience out of it. You know what I'm saying? So these like two different actions. And it's like what we've been talking about. There's the doing of it, and then there's the editing of it afterwards. So I wonder if we could take on this idea as our assignment, and you don't have to do the COVID mark making one at all, but you could engage with another emotion that you'd like to. And so I'd like to put out there a couple of ways in which we could get started with this. One is to make a piece in which you are giving thanks to somebody. Like, so an artwork could be begun where you are thanking somebody in your life who's been really important to you as a place to get started. And so it's a piece about your almost, and instead of writing the words, although you could include words in it, but you would want to not include imagery, but still to use colors and shapes and forms in which you are expressing appreciation for somebody who's really important to you in your life. Or you can use a piece of poetry that resonates for you, that has a feeling that you want to convey. And to use that as a place to begin a painting.
Hmm.
So how does that sound? And, you know, Jillian and Marianne, Marianne's already done this, but Jillian, if you want to continue to use this piece, that's wonderful. If you know, now that you're kind of into it, but to take this on, to let us begin this next series of work from some emotional place. So I think that when we think about giving thanks to somebody, that does help us to go inside of ourselves. And it doesn't have to be, you know, you can go as far as you want with it. Let's just put it that way. Like, it is hard. Like I said, it is hard. This
Wow,
is
yeah.
hard. This is
It's
hard to go there. It really is, but it also can be very rewarding and engaging, for sure. Because if you felt that, well, this is something nice to do, and it, you know, that's kind of like I'm skimming the surface, you know, this is fine, but I'm still not really feeling engaged. Letting yourselves feel these emotions can be a place. Now, I know for me, I'll tell you that I've had the experience of engaging, and I was really angry once. And
Once you were really angry once.
well, many times, but I was angry once and drew an art making experience out of that. I usually don't go for anger in my work, but and you know, yes, it went through a lot of stages before until, like I say, always, you know, you kind of edit it till it's really art. Like, so there's the immediate reaction that is very visceral and kind of all over the place, and then you work with it and work with it, and then you know, it becomes art after a time where you're help me here, you guys, like, you grapple with it for a while and it becomes more filtered.
Yeah. It becomes more abstract.
More abstract, exactly. So there's so again, there's a therapeutic spewing, and then there's the art making part of it that comes after the spewing.
No, that's perfect. I think I did I'll send it to you off, you know, later, but I did
Yeah.
something like that too when I was furious at somebody. And I made this sort of scarecrow.
Yeah.
But it was so, I mean, I really got into the process of making the thing rather than, and using the energy. I guess it was really channeling energy.
Yeah, channeling the energy. Exactly. Yes. So that engagement is the energy that these emotions give to us. Exactly. Anyway.
But gratitude is a tough one. I mean, well, you said poetry, but how about some other prompts or triggers? It's, you know, you
Yeah,
could
well,
start
poetry
anywhere.
or joy, or, you know, if you want to try to harness any of the emotions that we feel as humans and see where that takes us, you know, that would be a great place to begin. And we'll do some things with these as well. But I propose that you try this prompt on and see where it takes you, you know, and I don't want to say too much more because I would love to see, you know, you just go with that. But knowing that we have the tools of color and shape and marks that brushes or other tools can give us, you know, what collage and really any of these things that we've been working with, how would it feel to let that be the initiative that promotes a piece?
Now,
Does it
you
need
may
to-
not want to prescribe, but would you recommend a certain, like, would you go big, like 18 by 24?
Well, I would always say that, but it doesn't have to be, you know, large. I think, you know, maybe more important is that you are moved to something because of this prompt, and however you know, it comes out is fine. But I would love to see what happens for you when when you start with this, that's got to be a more personal expression. Judy, yeah.
When you first suggested this, my first reaction was to do something three-dimensional. Is that okay?
Absolutely, absolutely. Fine, totally fine to do that. Yeah, and right, I'm sort of changing my gears because I had said we would kind of work with a three-dimensional process. But again, I was looking at this feeling that this class, the one piece that we haven't gotten into is this, and it's such an important one. So if you want to respond three-dimensionally, that's totally fine, or with collage or with anything that we've done up till now, but see where this takes you.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's
How
just
many
try
months do we
it.
have to work on this?
Your life.
Look, you know, we have the balance of this class in which I'm here to, you know, like kind of just talk with you each and individually if you want to. But, you know, I'll write it up and send it to you as an email,
Great.
you know, to kind of
Yeah.
give you some parameters for it. I don't want it to be so open-ended that just seems like undoable either. But to think about the artists that we looked at as people, you know, for whom emotions really were, it seems to be, they really were places where they, you know, really got their energy from.
Adria, can I ask you as an artist a silly question? If gratitude were a color,
Mm.
what color comes to your mind?
Well, I think it would be more thinking about the person that I was talking to, you know, in terms of saying thank you to something.
Mm.
Because I don't know if that, I think it would be probably a lot of things. I think maybe for me, it might be thinking about, it's a hard one. I mean, no, this is not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that it's so important to try it on for size. I don't know if it would be a color, Marianne. I think maybe, you know, like if we're thinking about somebody who's really important in my life, maybe it would be my kids. You know, I think then it would be thinking about what is that feeling of nurturing? Or maybe I would think about each one of them as being, you know, an individual.
It's funny you should say that.
You know, maybe I would just take some colored paper and scissors and start to cut, you know, shapes that suggest, you know, what that experience of being a mother has been. I mean, it's not just, you know, it's almost too big. It's very
Yeah.
big. So maybe you
Yes,
can,
it is.
maybe to narrow it down, you know, somehow. Maybe it's to a parent, you know, how would you express that gratitude or the feeling of the relationship to that parent? Or maybe it's not gratitude, maybe it's anger, you know, I mean, we have so many mixed emotions about.
Maybe it's gratitude for the anger.
Maybe it's gratitude for the anger, but yeah, gratitude isn't really an emotion. I mean, anger or love is so amorphous, but you know, I'm just saying, can we get ourselves connected in an emotional way to somebody or something that drives a visual expression? Or maybe you want to just start with the idea of 1,000 marks, you know, and see where that takes you.
Mm.
But at any rate, I guess think about it as beginning with an emotion and see where it takes you. So that you don't have to have the emotion drive it all the way through. And it's really hard to keep hold of an emotion. I think anger is the one that I'm most energizing,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
You know,
Especially as a woman, right? Especially as a woman, there's so much to be angry about.
There is. So if you find that that is a place you want to start, that sounds as good as anything, and see where it takes you.
one day I went to a book fair and I picked up a book and and I was looking through it, and I had this finger tap me on the shoulder, and I looked at the finger, and it was kind of gnarly. And I turned around thinking, oh boy, she's going to yell at me for touching this book this way. And she looked at me and she said, do you see what you're doing to that book? And I said, yeah, and she said, you were caressing it. That's what books do to us.
Oh,
That's what they do to you. Don't ever forget that. And I said,
Wow.
yeah. When you were talking about gratitude, I was thinking, how am I going to make an abstract picture of all the books that changed my life?
Yeah, well, it means really thinking about, what does that feeling of being grateful look like?
Yeah.
What color is grateful? What shapes are? Nothing is, it's not wrong, it's not wrong or right. It's just, what comes out. What comes out. This gets a little bit to Susan's, you
Drink.
intuitive kind of approach, which I'm big on, but let's start there, and we will figure out how to kind of get to an art making part of it, from maybe a very visceral feeling to a cooler, considered expression.
Great class, Adria. This is a great class.
Oh, good. Feel that way. Great. I just feel like we cannot leave this without expressing that, Yeah, we just have to acknowledge it, because in the end of the day, art making for the maker and the viewer has got to be deeper, than simply playing around with colors. It's got to be deeper. I mean, I can only speak for myself. So the pieces that I showed you earlier, right? I mean, this has been work that's been in progress this whole year, and it's not, I can't point to anything about that and say it's about this or that. I can just say that at the very beginning of this whole series, for me, what happened was a very deep desire to engage people physically in the act of expression. So I've been painting for a long time, but I'm like, I don't want people to just look and move on. How can I grab them? I want them to have this conversation with me. I want it to be physical. And so also, this feeling of floating has been with me since I was a little kid. I remember somehow being in a room where I couldn't tell what was what was on the floor, or what was on the ceiling. And it was really stuck with me. That's just I can't even put words to it. I just know that that's something very appealing to me. I want people to feel floaty. And so that's why these works are floating in space. And they're floating close by. I want you to feel like you're floating with them. So
one thing about your art, Adria, is that that I've seen is that whether it's floaty or not, what I can tell about you is you're a very positive person, as opposed to, I mean, in general, compared to Edvard Munch or, Frida Kahlo or some of the pieces you showed us, because of your, what's that?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I will say this, I choose to have the work be more about sort of whimsy and playfulness on purpose.
Right, but the colors you use are very upbeat colors.
Yes, but I won't tell you, I will say that they have a dark side to me, and I've had, and
we all do.
We all do. I think it's a matter of what you want to choose to make your art about. What are you driven to make your art about? It's an interesting question.
Well,
guess
I
the
think,
thing is that, you know, a body of work may have the impetus of an emotional core, but as you work with it, it becomes, you know, it moves away from that. And it's edited and comes out at the other end, right? As art, which you hope you're making art from. Yeah. Marianne, did you want to say something?
I was just thinking of Edvard and Frida and thinking if they weren't positive, they would have killed themselves early and they wouldn't have created anything.
Well, that's right.
I think they lived in a time that was smothering and in circumstances that were smothering, and there was some light within them that led them to create that scream. Both of them were screaming, you know.
They were coping. Yeah, they were coping
Yeah.
with their lives in that way, you know, and
Yeah.
so, right, the initial, you know, yeah, how do you take pain and forge it into something that is uplifting to look at for other people or that other people can relate to? That's right.
I think that underlying emotion for both of them would be anger. You know, so angry that they have to live a life of pain or live in a time of like Trump or, you know, some kind of dictatorship or war.
Yep.
And you know, the anger part is kind of interesting because that is really also for me kind of a reflection of the circumstances of our own life. Like, you know, I'm old enough to remember when, you know, men told you what to do and women had no voice. We've come a long way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that kind of environment really, even though I've had a very privileged and happy life, there's an undercurrent of anger, you know, sort of push button issues that can really trigger that kind of anger, which is very similar, I think, to pain.
Yeah.
Don't you? There's a
Yes.
fine line. It's like laughing and crying are sort of fine
Yes,
lines.
absolutely. And then there's the art making part of it, which is, you know, the more to, yeah, like it's so interesting for people who can turn that into something else, you know? Yeah, a way of coping, but also, you know, kind of
Right.
beyond that, ending up being a salve for other people somehow. Yeah. Other people choose.
Aristotle said passion was the master and logic the slave. If you
Mhm.
artists, good thing artists who have passion have a slave to employ. You know, that's their artistic ability. Is the slave that can shape the passion.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Because yeah, like unbounded emotion, what is that? You know, for any of us. But then yes, you know, uh, what can we make of it? You know, is a very interesting question. So I mean, yeah, I just propose this as a place to start and see where it takes you guys. You know, let's just come back for next week, you know, with one or two, a couple pieces that, you know, you're exploring this idea, you're exploring somehow. And, you know, the COVID thing, you know, the 1,000 marks, I mean, one thing that's great about that project is that it does kind of give you this parameter of using 1,000 marks as a way to keep in check this like horrible, you know, thing we've all been through. And, you know, some people have been so deeply, deeply personally affected. I mean, how dare I, you know, who've not been affected that way, even approach, you know, that grief, but still, you know, maybe in doing those 1,000, you know, I think about it. It's a meditative experience, like doing a mandala, you know, where you're thinking about it while you're doing it. You know, you're thinking and feeling that and giving, who cares what it looks like? You know, it's that sort of trying that on and yeah, yeah, you know, giving us some sort of shape to it.
Well, that's what I got out of the Instagram was how it was for many people a transformational experience, just going through the process, and it changed them. I mean, set aside the initial purpose of what they were working on, just
Exactly.
going through the process was transformational.
I think that's what it is, Jillian. Yeah. And so, you know, at first it's like, oh, you know, so-and-so artist did, you know, this mark, isn't it beautiful? Like, we don't care about that. You know, I think what we care about is you had that experience, you know, and that's what's missing when you look at it. And that's what I initially felt was like really, no, you know, I was very skeptical of it until I watched that, as you did. Yeah. Susan.
So maybe the project should not be so-and-so artist's piece, but maybe it should be some other formation of that.
I know it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Or like a photograph of his face after he finished the piece, or I don't know, something
right.
besides
Right.
the actual piece
It
that he
is hard.
made.
And, you know, it's like the AIDS quilt where we're trying to kind of express some sort of group response to this tragedy that happened to so many people. You know, and in the making of each square, the love and care that went into those squares was made evident, you know, and so the people began to have a face. They weren't just a mark, they were a face, you know, they were a, you know, grouping of things. And like the 9/11 memorial, I mean, all these attempts we've had as public to grapple with these huge, horrific events, you know, we're up. How do you cope? Yeah.
There was another project I heard about recently where an artist started making an origami bird for every person that died, and they started early on when, you know, there were enough to count, and then it got to be so big that other people started folding origami birds and sending them to her, and she hangs everyone up. It's like practically in a gymnasium now or something like that. And I think this show is going to rotate or be moved to different parts of the country. And it just looked also very, very interesting. She just folded one bird for every life that was lost and then hung it from like fish wire or something.
Right,
like
you have a meditative experience with that, exactly. And I can see that, you know, these COVID pieces, if you have, how many people have died? 500,000 in this country?
More.
500,000 of these images in some gigantic space, you get the enormity of it because the numbers, you know, people just kind of gloss over those numbers. It's, you know, I think that's been said that, you know, people can't conceive of those numbers. It's just kind of meaningless. But when you put a face to that one person, you resonate so much more with that experience, like what happened. So
You said an origami gourd, and I love that idea actually.
yeah, but again, it's the person, as you fold it, you're thinking this person, this was a real person, you know. So it's as much about the process as it is, you know, looking at it. Yeah. Well, not an easy thing, but I invite you to try it, you know, and see where it gets you. And you know, as I said, from this experience, we will continue to, you know, have, you know, the next two classes we have on the way to the finish. We'll be seeing where this can go, you know.
Well, thank you. I'm going to leave a few minutes early, but nice to see you all, and good luck with this really challenging.
But it's a really
homework.
challenging one. Yeah, and I appreciate all of you, you know, giving it a shot.
Sure. Always nice to be challenged.
Yeah, for a challenge.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, take
Yeah.
care.
Okay,
Bye.
Judy, thanks. Nice to see you.
Bye-bye, Judy.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, so if anybody else has questions or, you know, that I can answer, I'm happy to hang out.
Well, I'm due to get my second COVID shot in a couple hours, so.
Okay. Yes.
Woohoo. So I think
congratulations.
thank you. I'm gonna sign off, and it
Yeah.
was a really, really good discussion
Yeah,
today.
thank you. And thank you,
I'm-
Jillian, for being honest about that whole thing, back and forth. And yeah, as I said.
Yeah, I was surprised by your answer when you said, well, I had a little bit of that too.
I did too.
Yeah,
You
That
know.
was cool. All right, well, goodbye, everyone.
All
See you.
right, bye, Jillian. See you next time.
Yep.
Susan, do you have any questions? You're brave.
Your whole class just peeled off.
Sorry. What?
Your whole class just peeled
Yeah, we're
off.
peeling off. Yeah, thanks, Adrian, for this. Like, oh God.
No, but I'm really, really enjoying this. So thank you so much. It's great.
Good.
It feels like everybody has been together for a long time.
Well, it
Is
does
that true?
now, doesn't it?
No, not me, the others. It feels like the other group. Do you all like live in Concord or something? And
Oh, only Tally and Judy have been together. They took a whole class with me, and that was 8 weeks. So they were together with me for a while. But Marianne, she took a class with me some 20 years ago.
Years
At
and years, yeah.
the De Cordova Museum School.
Yep.
So yeah, and Jillian, no, I haven't not known her before, but people live nearby. Yeah, I think everybody here besides you is from the area, but I think that's going to be changing now that we're all online. I'm so grateful that you found me. Susan, how did you again find this class?
I don't know.
You're
Honestly. I think I was actually just looking at different classes, and then you go from looking at the class to looking at the teachers' information about the teacher, and then you go from there, and then you find different people who are teaching in different places. So I guess I found Concord that way. And then there's also Winslow out in Seattle, Winslow Art Center. And do you know if there are any other interesting places like this?
Oh, there's so many art centers that are teaching all kinds of great. I mean, this one is based in Weston. I think it just
Weston.
depends. Yeah, it depends on where the teachers are. Like,
Yeah.
I
you
teach on my own, and I teach through various other art centers as well. Yeah. So
there's Concord Art Center too. And I'm
yeah, and I teach
between the two.
I teach there too. So I teach.
Oh, okay. That's why I
Weston.
found you, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Will you continue to teach online after this, or?
I want to. I really enjoy it, and I hope people do want to continue because I think it's great. I think
Have
there
you
will be people
before?
who want to teach, who want to take a class in person. But for me, I feel like this has been very successful. You'll have to, how do you feel about it? Like, do you?
Oh, I think it's great. I think your personal form of teaching, what you are teaching, is what I've been looking for. I don't know why I've had such a hard time finding. Are you very unique in this way of teaching?
I think I am. I do. I think that I've made this particular way of teaching a kind of a career choice, because 20 years ago, when I've been teaching for a part of my life, ever since I got out of grad school, I just really wanted to teach, and I love teaching adults. And I started teaching the, traditional things like paint, how to draw, how to paint, how to, figure drawing,
Drafting.
or printmaking or whatever. But, to teaching art, teaching adults, it always seemed like it wasn't really art making. I was teaching a skill or a technique, but not art making. And that's the hardest thing. So while I was, one time when I was teaching, I was in a library at one of the colleges I was teaching at, and I found a book called No More Secondhand Art. And it just called to me, and so I took it out of the library, and you could do that, the same thing. And it was written by a guy who really taught in a way that I had been looking for. So it was a series of creative encounters that he talked about that were ways that you could engage adults in helping them to find what art making is really about. If it's not making a pretty picture, then why are we doing it? So that's always the harder thing. Like, even in art schools, they don't really teach you.
Yeah, it's crazy. So if I need this, don't tons of people need the same approach?
Yes. And so I've been teaching classes that are variously named, passion art making, infinite well, whatever, but they're all the same, which
But
is
5,000 people teach how to draw or how to paint, but this is Very
It's very
different.
different. It's very different. That's why, and I think it's because it's much harder to teach this kind of a class. And I spent years kind of honing it with trying out different things on people to see what works. How do you get adults to, you know, go to these places that do make it more fulfilling, that isn't about like the rules and regulations of how to make art, because that's just always going to end up in the same place. Well, I learned how to draw this, but then left to my own devices, I don't know what to do. And drawing something realistically isn't making art. It
Yeah.
can
Well,
be,
to
but it
me,
is.
that's so intimidating also. I
Yeah, it's
mean, I went to,
intimidating, right? And it's really very limiting, because if you're saying that drawing a still life is art making, well, it's not. It's a means to art making. But the question is, how do you make that art making? It's a big
uh,
question. Yeah. So I know that I'm teaching something unusual. There are other artists who are teaching abstraction, but I don't know how they're teaching it. I mean, I think people do it different ways. There are other people that I know of who teach what I'm teaching in other ways. And there are books that I can put you to Susan, that will, there's one here, I just got one in front of me. Uh, Dean Nimmer is an artist who wrote this book, Art from Intuition. And it's a series of, it's almost like a self-teaching one too, which is, some of the things that I use in this class, but it's hard to do this on your own. It's really hard to learn from a book.
I can't do that.
It's very, most people can't. Most people can't. I mean, I like this one because it gives me ideas to teach you guys, but they still need, I think you still need a teacher to kind of show you the way and why you might be wanting to do this, So
Yeah,
it is an unusual thing. It is.
I'm a groupie now. Sorry. You must have tons of groupies.
I have the people that I've been working with since COVID that seem to
Since
take a lot of
COVID.
classes from me. Yeah.
But since COVID, so
Previous to
that
this, I actually had stopped teaching, frankly, for a couple of years because yeah, I don't know, just wanted to take a break and was really focusing on my own work. But since COVID, I've just really loved teaching online like this. And I find that somehow, I don't know whether it's being able to show images really easily through this way or show videos this way. It just really works,
I found that I have a hard time sitting down to do art, but when I'm on some kind of Zoom call, I do it. And I do other Zoom Zoom classes, not art classes, but sitting on a Zoom call is sort of encourages me to make art
Well,
somehow.
I'm feeling like but it's actually art making through Zoom is a thing in and of itself. It's like we need each other now and always, really. And art making actually, especially for people who are maybe you're not going to be put like your shingle out and say you're an artist and try and sell your work or anything like that. You want that experience of art making, and it really it requires and is fueled by having other people in the same room with the same intention, doing it together and talking about it. Like it's, that in and of itself is a thing. It really is. And I've seen it this whole year with COVID. I've seen it over and over again. People want to make art with other people and to talk about it together.
When I lived in Washington, I took an art class and I loved the teacher and she was great. And I went every week and blah, blah, blah. But it was nothing like this because I was really trying hard to make the art and I was struggling and she was trying to teach me how. And there were other people in the room and they were nice, interesting people, but she was trying to teach me how to do it. And I was striving. It was awful. I loved her and I loved it. Oh, and that's her piece. That's,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but I swear by this is really the heart of it. It's like, you want this satisfying experience of working with art materials that is freeing to you and doesn't stop you because of all the judges and all the shoulds and shouldn'ts, and how do you do that? That's the whole key to it. How can you get there either with an instructor or on your own, which
yeah.
is what we're trying to help people to do, so yeah, and I mean, this is the beginning of it. I would invite you to take this printmaking class that I'm teaching if you're interested in that.
I hate printmaking. It's torture,
No, but not this one.
honestly.
This is along the very same lines as we've been doing, but I mean, it's.
Oh God, I took a printmaking class. I went to Omega Institute a few years ago, and I spent it was torture. It'd make a big mess. It's
Not with
torture.
me, not with me, but anyway, I'm just saying that that's another one, but if you want to continue, I'll be doing more, So,
Terrific,
yeah.
wonderful. Thank
Okay,
you.
Susan, so that's it, but I'll try this and I'll see you next time and we'll continue. the
Okay.
class.
Have a good week. Thank you.
You too, bye-bye.
Good night.